Hi everyone, it's the English Simmer here, and if you follow me on Instagram or here on my YouTube community page, you will know that I have been planning this video because I asked you lot for your assumptions about The Sims 5 / Project Rene, as that is like the current working title for this game, which is honestly quite hilarious because I definitely remember recording an assumptions video on my channel before now. I went back and watched that video, and the last assumptions that I did, so many of you assumed that like The Sims 4 was going to be the last Sims game and that Sims 5 wasn't going to happen. I even personally agreed with that. So fingers crossed Project Rene actually does turn out to be The Sims 5. The very first one is The Sims 5 will look great in previews, but will still be buggy as hell. We are kind of in an era of games being buggy on release, which is pretty much down to like getting games out, them being rushed, developers, time crunches, all of that. We've just seen it with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Yes, I have about 40 hours in that game. Yes, I'm finding it very, very fun to play. However, it is a buggy mess. So I hate to say it, but I mean, from past history, I do think The Sims 5 will be buggy as hell. I'm just hoping that it's better than The Sims 4 on launch. This one's really interesting because it's something that I didn't really think about, but with all the new objects, Sims are going to be getting stuck everywhere. Routing was such a big issue for me personally in The Sims 3. I absolutely hated the way that Sims like walked around. Honestly, they would just like freak out and be like, "Nubu," the whole time. I definitely just said that they just stand there and yell baby. Actually, that makes the joke even funnier because this assumption is talking about them getting stuck on objects, and that's what babies are in The Sims 4. But I do actually agree with this. I didn't think about it when they showed like the preview of being able to kind of extend the bed, because it could be a single bed or it could be a double bed, and I actually think that's going to have a significant effect on routing, because I don't know how they're going to program it so that your sim knows like the difference between a double bed and a single, but I am not a programmer or a developer, so I definitely have no brain cells to like comprehend how they would get around that. There's probably a way. They are much smarter than I am. Speaking of smarter, can we please not sell The Sims 5 as being smarter Sims, because that just lets everybody down. Moving on to the assumptions about the graphics of The Sims 5, I think it will look a lot like Life is Strange in terms of graphics. Oh my word. I am praying to every Sims god ever that it actually does look like Life is Strange. Life is Strange next to The Sims is my favorite like gaming franchise. I would love it so much if it looked like Life is Strange True Colors. Hear me out. I don't really want it looking like the original Life is Strange games. Absolutely sign me up. I mean, come on, how would you not want a excuse me. I had a Life is Strange True Colors background for absolute years, and I forgot that I changed it to this one. Thanks, Luddy. I have been exposed. It's gonna look more realistic. I see why this assumption has been given from what we've seen of Project Rene so far, because it definitely looks like more realistic and less cartoony and stylized than The Sims 4. However, I do think that what they're currently working with is a lot of like placement objects that they haven't even like got their art style down really. I just think that's like placeholders. I honestly prefer the stylistic approach. I prefer games like Life is Strange, like The Sims 4. I don't really want to go back to the realism of The Sims 3, and honestly I'm scared that they're gonna push that even further and it's gonna get into like Uncanny Valley territory. Do we all remember when the news of that fake simulation game that was in development, People of Newbury, came out? Absolutely no thank you, cursed behavior. I do not want that in my Sims game. The graphics will be very similar, I'm assuming you mean to The Sims 4, because this franchise doesn't want to lose users with lower end PCs. I definitely think if they looked more realistic, it would have aged a lot more than The Sims 4 has. Don't get me wrong, I think The Sims 4 has come a long way in terms of like textures. Just look at the base game hairs that we got once upon a time and look at like the base game hairs that are being updated for free now. So know. I wouldn't mind if like The Sims 5 is just kind of a better Sims 4 graphically. Also, that kind of ties in, I guess, with like the lower end PCs and them already talking that it's gonna work on like all platforms, which probably includes console, PC, which The Sims 4 already does, and then also mobile, which does still scare me, but we'll get into that. Like, yeah, you're gonna need graphics that actually run on all three of those main platforms. They will include some kind of color wheel. That has already been basically confirmed, even though it was just an early look. They definitely had the pattern customization and also the color wheel customization. I hope that's not just for build mode. I hope they actually carry that over. 1 for hairstyles, 2 for skin tones. I hope it's a thing in Create a Sim, and the graphics will be more of Max's Match and Alpha Mix. I don't really understand like what that means. Like, I think those two entities are so separate in my head. I guess there is kind of the like clayfied version of hairstyles that some specific people create for The Sims 4. I didn't know if this related like graphically or not, but it's gonna be an updated Sims 3. No, Sims 3 wasn't my favorite when it came to looks, but kind of ties into the next assumption because Project Rene is short for Project Renesmee. They're basing it on the baby from Twilight. I mean, if it's gonna be an updated Sims 3, then yeah. Spot the difference between a child in The Sims 3 and Renesmee Cullen. There was a fair few of you who had assumptions about the monetization and the mobile aspect of Project Rene. Microtransactions. Straight to the point, that's how I feel like they do it in video games. Honestly, hearing microtransactions in the same sentence as The Sims gives me the heebie-jeebies. I do not need that negative energy in my life because when I think of it, I think of mobile, which I haven't touched The Sims Mobile in a very, very long time. It just scares me because the catalog is so big for The Sims 4, and I know that people will say like, oh, The Sims 3 store was like microtransactions, which yes, it was. Kits in The Sims 4 are kind of microtransactions because yes, they are. Microtransactions have existed in the ecosystem of The Sims franchise for a fair while now. However, when you start thinking about like how The Sims Mobile does it, I feel like every new Create a Sim asset, every new hairstyle that we get, eye colors, furniture, like so many things could be behind a paywall, and my mind just goes in 500,000 different directions. And if EA's mind is also going in those 500,000 different directions, I don't want The Sims 5. I would much prefer a DLC model that we already have. Okay, maybe get rid of kits, and yeah, maybe only stick to 2 different types of packs because I feel like expansion packs definitely need more attention. We'll include a monthly paid subscription to content. There's so many different like monetary models that they can use, and I don't like any of them. I hate having to pay a subscription and not actually owning anything. Like, don't get me wrong, for like TV, I'm like fair, because I would never go out and like buy a DVD of like a series unless I really like it. Wow, I just aged myself. Me, I end up Winona Earp full box set on Amazon for the last 2 years. But imagine if you like go off like The Sims 5 for like a couple of months and then you just have to like cancel your sub, but then you can't play it whatsoever. Like, what if one day I just wake up and I'm like, oh, I really miss my Sims, I should go check on them, and you just like can't do it? You'll have to buy everything, like the phone version and the PC version. I'm assuming this person, sorry, I don't mean to assume about your assumption, but I'm assuming that you basically mean you'll have to buy each different version currently, like you have to do. I think it's gonna be free to play. I think that they are basically gonna have the DLC model, but the base game will be free, kind of like how The Sims 4 is now. I'm hoping anyway. I'm just gonna keep saying that they're doing DLC so that I just manifest it. It will prioritize the use of multiple platforms and multiplayer over aesthetics. I hope not. I mean, we all know how SimCity turned out. That was an always online video game, and the servers basically like were broken from the get-go, and SimCity haven't made a game since 2014. The studio went bust. I'm hoping that at its core, The Sims stays as like a single player. Obviously, we've already seen some like interaction with multiplayer multiplayer, we saw two people building at the same time and like working on something together. One of them seemed to be playing on mobile, the other seemed to be playing on a PC. I personally have said that I'm forever against multiplayer. However, if they do it like Animal Crossing or Minecraft, for example, and it's just like an invite your friend in to kind of play the game together or build together, I am okay with that. Like, as long as it doesn't always have to be online, and single player also gets most of the attention. My biggest fear for being multiplayer is that like multiplayer somehow starts making like more money, kind of like GTA Online. People are playing this way more, and I'm like, that's because you're putting all your love, money, and attention into multiplayer because you want to earn more money, and then single player just gets like absolutely shoved to the side of the road and forgotten about for 4 years. Then we had a few assumptions about open worlds, which honestly, I have to say, I'm not really fussed either way when it comes to having open world or not having open world. I do think that technology has moved forward so far that they could do open world very, very well. If they keep it like The Sims 4, I would like it to be open neighborhoods, open world with more shells and rabbit holes. Like, I'm kind of nonchalant. And then someone else said, I assume it's still not going to have open world. I want to know what you would all prefer. Are you fussed about having an open world, or are you kind of like me where you're just like, I'll just like play it whatever? I will say, I do think that The Sims 4 has like trained me into not really like minding if it's not open world. Speaking of The Sims 4, this next bunch are basically like comparing it against like The Sims 4. I don't know, that's like the best category I could give these assumptions. Since they're not fixing or adding what people really want in The Sims 4, they're gonna add it to The Sims 5. I mean, yes, I think this is fairly true of an assumption. I think it would be silly for them to not look back at The Sims 4 and be like, okay, like what were the things that people did like? What were the things that people have been asking us for that we didn't put in it, or asking us for and we did eventually put in it, but then maybe we didn't do it so well? I would hope that The Sims 5 is a much more improved game over any of the past games. I don't want to feel like I'm taking a step back. They're not going to improve much upon The Sims 4. Wow, I really just built up that last assumption just to get dragged back down. Packs are gonna feature even less. I don't know how that is possible. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy like a fair few of the Sims 4 packs, but when you do go look at like an expansion pack list for The Sims 3 and then compare it to The Sims 4, The Sims 4 seems measly in comparison. We have literally been fed crumbs. I genuinely feel like one of the little rodents from My First Pet stuff when it comes to content in The Sims 4. Also, cross-pack compatibility. Very, very lackluster in The Sims 4, so I hope that that's actually looked at. They won't continue the lore of previous games. This is a fairly, like, fair assumption, because The Sims 4 also didn't carry on that lore. The Sims 4 is based in, like, an alternate universe, which I don't particularly like. I mean, that's really because the townies don't have, like, any relationships with one another. We didn't even really have story progression up until, like, this year. Honestly, what I would love is maybe for them to focus on like the lore of townies that we haven't seen in a very long time. I think the goths should be like a staple. I feel like the pancakes honestly should now be a staple in The Sims, but I think that they should go back to like the newbies. A lot of the families that we had in The Sims 2 that had so much drama between them, I would love to see a continuation of their lore. The DLC will be more expensive than Sims 4 and extort the players. I was gonna say the payers, which we are technically. This one I feel like is also gonna be slightly true if they do stick with the DLC. I don't know if they could charge much more though. And I get that like inflation is a thing, but in some countries that is so expensive. Like it's expensive anyway, but when it comes to like currency exchange and stuff, like it's really expensive in some countries. Oh, this one broke my heart when I read it. They're gonna undo stuff they improved with The Sims 4, like pronouns, and they'll release an update later. I honestly think if they were to do that, there would be so much uproar. The Sims basically prides itself on being an inclusive and diverse game, and I think if they were to roll back that inclusivity that we've had, and don't get me wrong, I still think that so many more things need to be done for it to continue being inclusive and diverse. I don't think that they can get away with undoing it, honestly. I don't think that this is going to be true. These next couple ones are actually super interesting because I've seen this theory floating around the little interwebs, and I'm like, I personally don't agree with it, but I can kind of see why people are thinking it. I think Project Rene could be a new Sims game and not a Sims 5, a mobile compatible decor game. I do think that this assumption is based on the fact that they've only currently showed us build mode. Like in the Rene preview that we got at the Sims Summit, I don't think it's just gonna be a build simulator. I know that people already call the Sims 4 a build simulator. I do think it's gonna be the Sims 5. I think Project Rene will eventually turn into the continuation of the franchise. I think the only reason that they're currently focusing on build mode is one, because they kind of wanted to show off the creativity and the new customization tools, which I think we can all agree seemed pretty damn cool. I hope it carries on into Creator Sim. I think they just showed us build mode because one, it was the most polished right now, and also two, they kind of need all of those objects like in the game to even like start testing gameplay, because obviously they need Sims to be able to like route around things, they need Sims to interact with objects to like test gameplay, so it makes sense that they would really focus on build mode first. But I would love to hear your opinions on that one. Super customizable like a phone, you can change your main menu, loading screen, etc. I mean, this assumption definitely makes sense when you look at like the customization tools that we've already been shown in build mode. I don't really know how it would work like resolution wise if you could change things like the UI. I think that's such like a specific experience to the player. I think there's so many different variables that we even saw it with like the UI scaling. That was actually like quite difficult for them to put in because of like the different ranges that people play. I mean, console literally only just got UI scaling like what, 4 years down the line from when PC got it, even though console definitely needed it more because they tend to play on like bigger monitors where it's harder to see. However, I would love for this assumption to be true. I would love to be able to customize your UI. I definitely find build by mode, especially when you're going through like all the BB object stuff, it's really difficult to see what each little thing is because some of the items are like so small. I recently said that in the clutter kit. I was like, what the, maybe it's just because I'm 28, but I was like zooming in, I was like, what is this? I think it will be a very sleek and modern interface. I mean, I would like to see it because from what we've seen in the freaking previews so far, I haven't seen that. No, I do think that everything is a placeholder. I don't think it's the prettiest looking game right now, but I think they're more focused on like getting the tools right than like any of the UI design. That probably is one of the last steps of game design. Toddlers will be there at launch. I mean, we can dream, Julian, we can dream. I hope that toddlers are there at launch, and I also hope that babies aren't objects at launch. People have been hyping it up too much and too early on, only to tear it down like right now with The Sims 4. I will hold my hands up and say I don't think that people are hyping this up. If anything, I think that the Sims community is definitely a lot more critical at the moment. I've seen like less hype and more like worried criticism, I would say. I mean, from what they said and showed us in the community summit, they're basically showing this to the community so early on because they sort of want it to be like a project for them to work on alongside the community. So I think giving those criticisms, giving that feedback, giving opinions is so important. 5 will either save the franchise or destroy any hopes of it surviving. I'm hoping for the former, expecting the latter. Oof. I mean, I agree with this. I genuinely didn't think that we would get a Sims 5, so like I feel like I was already being slightly pessimistic. But I mean, hey, Sims 4 has been going on for like the longest that we've ever had a Sims game. Like I was just expecting them to let The Sims 4 like run its course and that was it. I really hope that it does rejuvenate the community, the game. I think that they could do so many cool things with it. I assume that it's not going to be called The Sims 5. They're rebranding the franchise. I very much agree with this assumption. I think this is going to turn out to be true. We've seen it with Skate recently. Everyone was like, Skate 4, Skate 4. They've announced it's just going to be called Skate. And I've kind of already compared like The Sims 4 and like how the base game is now free to play against like the Skate model that they've been talking about. They use the same language. They talk about how they want Skate to last forever. They want that like longevity. It's gonna have updates for so long, and that's the reason that it's free to play, because they want all of these people to have all of these updates, which then makes me think that like obviously microtransactions is gonna come with it. I think they're just gonna call it like The Sims, because like most people refer to The Sims as like The Sims 1 now anyway. So there we have it. Those are all of your assumptions. Thank you so much for submitting them to me. Honestly, these videos are like really fun. It's nice to see what like assumptions people are drawing from like what we've already seen of it. Yeah, I know it's super early and I know that so many things can change when it comes to game development, but I think it's just like really interesting to know like how the community is feeling literally from the first look. If you have any more assumptions, I would absolutely love to hear them in the comments down below. I say it all the time, but it's why I love recording these types of videos. I love having a good old natter with you all. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all, and I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye now.